Great.
And we are live now with the public hearing for the 2021 preliminary budget meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. We are, in fact, beginning our preliminary meeting for our 2021 budget meeting. We are all here and gathered, and Dave Boscola, our finance director, will shortly be telling us all about the budget. But first, I wanted to just ask Larry King from Public Information to explain how people can bring any public comment to this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody who would like to submit a comment or a question for this meeting can do so by emailing us at publiccomment@buckscounty.org.
Thank you.
And I will read the questions or the comments at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Boscola, we are ready to hear about the upcoming budget.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Wait for the slide. Slide 2, Michael. Slide 3. So this is the chronology of the budgeting process that finance goes through with all the departments. We begin our process in August with departments submitting their budget requests. During the month of September, the division leaders review the requests and adjust them as they approve them, and the preliminary budget is compiled for discussions with the division leaders and the department heads. We conduct those meetings in October and review the budgets against what their requests were in the past, what their actuals were for 2019 and 2020, and try to compromise on a sufficient budget for the departments for 2021. The preliminary budget is presented to the commissioners and released to the public it was this year on November 23rd. It was made available and posted to the website on November 23rd. The discussions on the preliminary budget continue through adoption, and tonight is the public hearing. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot, a broad overview of where we stand now. The budget is $467.4 million. We anticipate that our revenue for next year will come short of that $455.4 million, which leaves a $12 million shortfall for the commissioners to consider how to cover. Next slide, please. So these next two slides are the spending allocation and the revenue that the county receives, and they've been pretty consistent over the past decade. The departments and divisions that make up Health and Human Services comprise 49% of the budget, public safety, 27% of the budget, and the balance of the departments, which are mainly administrative departments, make up 24% of the budget. Our sources of revenue are, again, pretty consistent year over year. Real estate taxes comprise 40% of the budget, state revenue 40%, federal revenue 6%, and departmental revenue, which consists of fees for service and departmental fees, 14%. So like I had mentioned, that there's a $12 million deficit. Right now, it's presented in the budget as a draw on general fund balance, but the commissioners can propose different options to plug the shortfall, either reduce spending. We continue to explore new revenue possibilities, new grants, and there is, I guess, always under consideration is raise taxes to fill the gap, or a combination of any one of these options. So this is an opportunity for questions either by the commissioners or the public. There is the document that's posted to the website, and it's available for viewing as we switch to the preliminary budget.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left to see if there's any public comment. Is there any questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, Dave, this is Jane. And I think I know the answer, but I think it might be good to get out there. I mean, this year we had that settlement with the Taha settlement that's been hanging over the heads of the counties for a number of years. And this budget reflects the payout for that settlement. Is that correct?
The payout for that settlement will occur in this year, 2020.
Right.
So it is not part of the 2021 budget.
Okay, so it's going to be paid out in this year. Okay.
Any other questions?
How the $12 million deficit we have, how much of that is just sort of a structural deficit, something that just, I know we've had people, a transition team, took a look at the finances and they made some recommendations, trying to cut spending, tax raises, tax increases were a possibility, but they did note that the county has run a deficit for 7 of the past 10 years. So some of this is a structural deficit. It's not about there was a dip in terms of taxes coming in and that's caused the deficit, or that we increase spending a tremendous amount, and that it's just a structural deficit. It always sort of runs behind. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. In 2018, in preparing for the 2019 and 2020 budgets, finance had recommended that the Board of Commissioners approve either a 2% millage increase or a 1% and 1% to fill a structural deficit within the budget by increased spending that accounts for increased costs for employees and for services. The prior Board of Commissioners approved the 1% for 2020, but there's a $7.6 million structural deficit. Now, if you take into consideration that right now, as presented, the preliminary budget has a $12 million structural deficit. So we went from 7.6, there's an increase in debt service for 2021. And there's cost of living adjustments that we're negotiating with union employees and non-represented employees. And there's also an increase of cost of services that are provided. So at the beginning of 20, there was a $7.6 million structural deficit. This, as presented to you tonight, there's a $12 million structural deficit. Now, we continue to work, as we have through the months of the chronology, to work on finding savings throughout the budget. Since this was posted on November 23rd, the budget has changed and there's been savings realized within the budget. So that number is a little bit different now. And I continue to work with our finance team and with the departments and divisions to try and close that gap as much as possible before it's presented to the Board of Commissioners for adoption on the 16th.
Right. I mean, it's certainly, don't know. It's sort of politics, I guess. And it's worse that new commissioners coming in January of 2020 were handed a budget with a hole in it, which could have been plugged by the previous board if they had chosen to listen to your advice. So they kind of left it for us to deal with. I know that we came in with some ideas about looking for ways to increase revenue, looking for ways to cut spending. This year has been obviously very difficult, and with the pandemic and the election, and trying to do that. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how much of that structural deficit we can attack in 2021, which I hope will be a more normal year for everybody, not just for the people on this call. I know certainly tax increases are something that no one ever wants to talk about, especially not when we have an economic situation like the one we have now. I think that would be a bad idea myself. And I do note as well that the three commissioners, working together as we have all year, did actually go out to change or to take advantage of the market dip back in the spring, refinancing the bonds, which saved some money for us. And so this reflects that action already, the fact that we have this budget. But I appreciate all the work that's gone into it and continues to go into it from you and all the department heads in your department, especially Mr. Boscola. So I know budget season is never a fun thing. I saw that in the township level. This is obviously much bigger than that.
Thank you.
Mr. Boscola, I don't know if you remember this, but when we had this meeting a year ago, do you remember where we were? What the deficit was?
$16 million.
Okay. I mean, I think that's an important thing to mention, that this has been a very difficult year for everybody. I mean, the people who don't have jobs, whatnot, but we have still been able to manage that budget enough that we are 4 million less than we were this time last year. And so that's a good thing. So I'm glad about that. I am grateful to be able to tell people that we have asked our employees to participate a little more in their healthcare plan. And although you're still working on that with some of the contract bargaining units, we've been successful with that. And I think that's a step in the right direction. So, and I guess this is a tough year, as I said, for everybody. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get this down, that we don't need to do a tax increase of any kind this year. That doesn't mean that won't have to happen in the future because of that structural problem, but I'm hoping not to do that and put that on the shoulders of taxpayers this year.
Hey, Dave, just one more question. Our fund balance with the county. Let's say you laid out those options and, you know, we still got some work to do about trying to get that structural deficit down. But let's say, for instance, that we filled that structural deficit mainly with money from our fund balance. Can you give us an update on where it is now and where that will leave us if that's what we do?
So the budget as presented in preliminary is as close to true reflection of how operations will result for this year, absent any induction of money from CARES. So we got CARES funding for this year, but this preliminary budget does not take that into account yet. So as Commissioner Harvey had stated, we had saved $2.7 million with a refunding. It's anticipated that we're going to save in excess of $3 million in our self-insured healthcare for this year. There's other avenues that we're saving money. So it is anticipated that a $7.6 million draw in the general fund for this year is not going to occur. We're actually going to add approximately $7 million to the general fund for the end of this year. Now, this does not solve, these are one-time realizations of savings and revenue or expense avoidance for 2020. It doesn't resolve the structural deficit, but it does put us in a better position to start 2021. So it's anticipated that we're going to start 2021 with $30 million instead of ending ending 2020 with $16 million. So it's quite a bit of a turnaround with those savings. So the final budget is going to include the resulting the anticipation of the resulting effects of CARES, and it's anticipated that the county is going to, once we realize all of the allowable expenditures under CARES, and they're accurately accounted for within the 2020 budget, which CARES funding ends December 30th, 2020, we're probably going to end up with a fund balance probably north of $50 million. So, and which it again puts us in a better position to fund the services for next year that we need to, in consideration of and again a draw in the general fund for 21 just resolves this structural deficit for a single year. That'll have to be addressed eventually, either through spending reductions or new revenue or a tax increase. So the final budget that I will have for the commissioners shortly, probably by the end of this week or Monday, will have that CARES overlay to show the impact. CARES, because it's this year, is only going to affect the beginning fund balance. Operations as they're presented are going to be adjusted up and down according to priorities for the commissioners for next year. But that beginning balance is going to probably change from 30 to 50.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is there any public comment, Larry?
I have received.
Sorry about that squeaking.
No questions or public comment, Commissioner.
So I guess we will discuss this again on December 16th, unless anybody has anything else to add. So we'll see you all then. Thank you, Dave, for your work on this.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks,
thank you,
Dave.
Commissioner. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay.